He wasn't cruel, and somehow, that made it hurt even more. If he had been cold, sharp, dismissive in obvious ways, maybe I would have known how to leave. Maybe the ending would have been clearer. But instead, there was kindness. There was calm. And a distance I could never quite close. His heart didn't reject me loudly. It simply never opened. It beat in its own quiet rhythm, steady, polite, untouched. And no matter how close I stood, I could never make it recognize mine. So I loved him in the ways I knew how. I gave patience when he needed space. Understanding when he went silent. I filled the pauses with laughter, softened his days with warmth, offered reassurance when doubt crept into his voice. I believed love worked like that. That if you gave enough, if you poured yourself fully into someone, eventually, they would meet you there. That effort could create feeling. But his heart was never an empty cup waiting to be filled. It was something else entirely, a quiet, closed space with just enough light to keep hope alive, but never enough to let me in. And I stayed there longer than I should have. Convincing myself that if I just tried differently, loved more gently, waited more patiently, one day, the door would open. But it never did. Not because I wasn't enough. Not because I didn't love him well. But because his heart was never meant to hold me. And that truth is heavier than rejection. Because there was no villain here. No lies. No false promises. Just someone who existed as they were, kind, careful, and emotionally unavailable in ways I couldn't change. I saw his heart come alive, just not for me. For his passions. His dreams. Moments that didn't include my name. I memorized the way his eyes lit up, and learned, quietly, that I wasn't the reason. And still, I tried. I tried to become easier to love. Quieter. Softer. More understanding. Less demanding. I reshaped myself, piece by piece, hoping that if I finally fit, he would finally feel. But love doesn't work that way. Hearts don't respond to effort alone. They respond to connection, to something natural, unforced. And that is something no one can create by trying harder. So I stopped knocking. Not out of anger, but out of understanding. Some doors are not closed because you are unworthy, but because they were never yours to enter. I sit with that truth now, gently. Without fighting it. Without resenting him for being who he is. Because I know. I loved sincerely. And there is nothing to regret in that. If this story was only meant to be a quiet chapter, filled with almosts, and maybes, then I will carry it softly. Not as a wound, but as something that taught me how deeply I can feel. Because love given from the heart is never wasted. Even when it isn't returned. Be prosperous and share happiness.